Are you or someone you know looking to buy or sell a home? When you use a HomeGain Realtor to buy or sell a home, you can get $150. Visit HomeGain.com and click on the Promo 150 banner at the top of the page to get started. Compare HomeGain Realtors and choose your favorite. Complete your home purchase or sale transaction with a HomeGain Realtor, and HomeGain will pay you $150. Get started today by going to HomeGain.com. Welcome back, everyone, to Real Estate 360. I'm your host, Ryan Sloper, joined today by my guest, Louis Cammarosano, the general manager of HomeGain. Quick reminder, the show is designed and dedicated to building the Washington, D.C. Metro's housing and credit markets one house at a time. If you ever have any questions, concerns, or real estate needs, the best number to reach out to us is 877-245-2030. That's 877-245-2030, or visit us via the web at realestate360live.com. That's realestate360live.com. It's time for this week's Market Movers. This segment was brought to you by HomeGain. HomeGain is the place to get you started buying or selling a home, finding a realtor, and getting real estate questions answered. Go to homegain.com today to see what I'm talking about. All you have to do is type in your home's address, and you'll get an instant free estimate of your home's value online. It's a great way to monitor your home's value, and it's totally free. So check that out today when you get a chance at homegain.com. So like I mentioned earlier, we have the big Fed meeting, which will conclude, and the statement will be given by Bernanke this Thursday at 2:15. Outside of that, the economic data is pretty thin until Friday, which we have the August retail sales, industrial production, factory usage, and August CPI. Obviously, there has been a little recent rally in mortgage markets, which has driven up the 10-year note that had stalled out for a while. They had fallen from 1.86% on the 10-year all the way down to 1.55%, but rates have edged back up slightly, and the 10-year is currently around the 1.67 range. So, mortgage-backed securities are kind of well off their best levels of where they had went a couple weeks ago. I would state that, you can't go wrong no matter where your interest rates are, is sub 4% at this point in time. So many of the emails and phone calls that I get from listeners are, is now the right time? Should I hold off another month or two? It just doesn't make sense to me, because if you're happy with where it's at today, don't worry about where it's going tomorrow. Okay, because everything can happen, anything can change in a moment's notice, and the biggest thing to remember is that their rates have so much more room to go up than they have to come down. We're at historic lows for the most part, and to just be able to capitalize and take advantage of them, you're doing yourself a true long-term good to be able to take advantage of them, lock your family into these historically low cost of home ownership. And I would say that, it's not worth worrying over an 1/8 or 1/4% in interest rate one way or the other, because you're getting phenomenal rates right now. Also, there's been some questions lately, and I wanted to address them as to, is it smart for people to buy short sales? A lot of people are going through the process, and I've actually had 2 or 3 emails in the last 2 weeks about this, going through the process where they're the buyers trying to purchase a short sale transaction, in which case, the seller is trying to short pay off 1 or 2 of his current lenders. And, the process can be a very arduous process, can be very, take months and months, sometimes 6 months, sometimes to a year. And you as the buyer, I just want you to understand that it's critical for you, if you're going to write a contract on one of those type of properties, that you be willing to stick it out, or at least be willing to continue looking at other properties, because, there's no guarantee when you're looking at a short sale that that's going to go through. And I'll give you for instance. This has recently happened in one of my transactions for a buyer that I was working with. We wrote an offer. The list price was $250,000. We offered to buy the property at the full list price, $250,000, with no seller concessions, and the seller actually accepted that. That's the first piece of the transaction. So now that the seller's accepted, then it goes to the banks for bank approval. Well, the banks are then going to, most likely, what they're going to do is they're going to send out probably their own agent, which is different from the one that's actually listed the property for sale. They're going to go out, hire them to go out and do what's called as a BPO, and to get a better valuation on the property. That BPO will come back to the bank, and then the bank will then review that and determine if they want to counteroffer, or if that offer is not sufficient enough, they'll raise it up. So in this particular case where we had offered $250, they said they were going to counter back. They had a BPO done and they were going to counter back, and the property's worth $275,000. Okay, so that's $25,000 more than the offer that we had originally made. So at that point in time, it's now back on the buyer. The buyer has the option then they can walk away. They can walk away from the transaction, or they can counteroffer. Now, what I've seen over the last 6 to 12 months is that the banks are pretty open to countering back and forth. Now, obviously, most of the time they have their own bottom line, and they know that in the back of their heads, and they're going to get to that at some point. But most of the time, you can go back and forth and arrive somewhere in the middle. In this particular case, we countered back at $255,000. The bank then recountered at $260,000. We met in the middle there. Now, this process, okay, it's not quick. It doesn't happen overnight. This particular transaction, from start to finish, from the time we wrote the contract to actually getting the bank approval letter, took about 110 days. So, close to 4 months there. And then from the time that you get the short sale approval letter, the banks typically give you about 30 to 45 to 60 days for the buyer to be able to obtain their home loan and close. So if you're looking at, in a broader scale here, I would say 6 months is probably the time that you need to allot yourself from start to finish. Now, for many people, this isn't going to work out. If you're forced to move, in the next couple months, then I wouldn't probably recommend writing a contract on a short sale, because things probably aren't going to move as fast as you need them to. So the next question that I always get is, okay, well, if not short sales, then what about foreclosures? Well, foreclosures typically, as long as you don't have any title issues, which I've seen there have been some title issues on properties lately that can cause problems. So the buyer gets all of their, gets the property under contract to close in 30 days. They get their loan all lined up, and then all of a sudden there's title issues, and the selling bank didn't foreclose properly, so they have to go back and re-foreclose. That could stall out a transaction. But all things being equal, most of the time on a actual foreclosure, you can close in probably 30 to 45 days, no problem. So that would be a better avenue for people that need to move in somewhere and need to move in there quick. So you have your foreclosures and normal regular sales that you should be able to move in a 30 to 45 day period. Short sales, I would just say go ahead and bank on 6 months. Now, if it comes in shorter than that, great, but it could come in longer than that as well. Louis, you and I have talked at length about, short sales and what that really entails, and people feeling like they're going to get good deals on the short sales. And sometimes, you could get maybe 10, 15, 20% discount because there is a waiting period involved with that. Have you, with any of your surveys, have you found that realtors are more frustrated because that they're dealing with more of those type of transactions, or is there any sort of info that's out there that you know of?
Yeah, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, our customers did not want to receive leads relating to foreclosures and short sales. Then they eventually realized that a great percentage of the market is foreclosures and short sales. And then, short sales became what a lot of the consumers and the home buyers were interested in, so they learned how to do short sales. And we did do a survey on home ownership satisfaction earlier this year, and it showed that short sales were the favorite. People who had bought a short sale were the most satisfied. So, while there are pitfalls in a short sale, and they used to be a lot harder to get done because of the banks were dragging their feet,
yep,
they do seem to be a bit more popular now. And however, you do have to be aware of all the points you just made, that there's a lot of time potentially involved, and it's not as simple as finding the house that you want and then putting an offer on it and getting your financing and moving in, because there are often many delays unforeseen.
Yeah, I mean, and, at the end of the day, there's a reason why you're getting a little bit of the discount. It's because you're waiting. However, there's numerous things that can pop up that could cause your transaction to stall out or not even close at all.
Right, but Ryan, the people that benefit most are investors, because they'll have offers out on a lot of them. They'll buy all of them if they go through, and they're not necessarily on a timetable other than to get their money to work for them, but they don't have to move in. They just have to, once they're sold and closed, get in there, do the renovations, and try to flip it.
Exactly.
They're in an advantage in a short sale. Often they're cash buyers, and they don't necessarily have a time horizon.
And I was going to mention that too, Los. That's a good point. That many of the investors out there, that's what there's not as many foreclosures on the market now, right? So their next option is to go out there and write off as many offers as they possibly can on all the short sales that are out there.
And in fact, sometimes they do a little pre-marketing to try to get people who they think might be short sale candidates, and they get them interested in the concept.
Yeah.
It's something that individuals generally don't do. You don't harass your neighbor thinking about selling because I might want to buy.
Right, absolutely. No, I mean, that's definitely one of the tactics that, many investors are using because, like I said, they're always looking for deals and they feel like the short sale is the way to go. It's going to be interesting to see how things play out, as we move forward because the banks seem like they're really coming around to understanding that, it's important to not only let short sales go through. They're good for the bank. They're good for the consumer. But they're doing it in more of a timely manner. I mean, I think a lot more of these sales are starting to scale back more towards that 90-day window versus the 6-month window that I suggested. But, in the Washington, D.C. metro area, the majority of sales are regular sales and short sales. They're not foreclosures. Now, in many other areas of the country, foreclosures are more plentiful. They're out there, and there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of downward pressure on prices because there's more of them. In the D.C. metro area, though, if you're looking for a foreclosure deal, and I can speak from personal experience because I had bought another house about a month or two ago, that the kitchen was completely ripped out. Okay. Kitchen was completely ripped out, so you basically had to get a renovation loan on it. So it was only a certain type of financing that could be had. Left it open to get a good deal on that property because it was going to deter majority of the people. But if you're looking at a foreclosure that's going to be move-in ready, the banks or investors are going to price that accordingly, and they're going to price it more towards like what the going market rate is. So the only time you're really going to get a steal is if there's a lot of work that needs to be done to that property, and then you have to have the means to be able to do that work or know people that can.
And the time.
So, if you're looking for any of the, those type of properties, I can help you out with that, but just rest assured that you need to be working with somebody that can help, manage these properties and get them from start to finish. It's 877-245-2030. 877-245-2030. When we come back and go over FHA is considering waiving its 3-year foreclosure waiting period and what that could possibly mean for people that have short sold or foreclosed in the last 3 years. When we come back, stay right there.